Last thing for me is I want to circle back to the question of so-called date rape drugs and talk about this issue that happened to this young woman, Samantha Sims-Somerville, who was poisoned in 2021 and subsequently died. It was in the Times Colonist recently. I've had a bunch of correspondence about it. I know it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I want to bring it up if that's okay with you. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you know the details, Chief, but for those who are listening along, I'm just going to read a portion of the Times Colonist piece here. While foul play was initially suspected, Victoria Police closed their investigation without recommending charges in September 2022. Not satisfied, Sims, who is the mother of the young woman who died, excuse me, pursued charges as a private citizen against two people she believes are responsible for her daughter's death. She compiled a 45-page package of evidence, including text messages and social media posts that she believes showed two people were criminally involved in the death of her daughter, end quote. And the article goes on to explain that she managed to convince the coroner's service that this was in fact a homicide. They switched it from whatever it was before to actually saying this is a homicide. The Office of the Police Complaint, no, sorry, the prosecution service hasn't decided yet if they'll reopen the case, but this grieving mother has filed a complaint with the OPCC, the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner, against the three officers who investigated her daughter's death, alleging officers ignored important evidence. She said she has lost confidence in Victoria Police and would like her daughter's death to be investigated by another police force. So that's not great, and we obviously don't want a grieving parent running their own like guerrilla investigation, but then again, she managed to convince the coroner's service through this dossier that it was in fact a homicide. So can you explain what went wrong here, or what's the lessons learned? What's your response to this?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for flagging this. This is something that I know was of interest to our police board. We updated our police board on this. I unfortunately won't be able to go into that level of detail because there's a level of confidentiality. So I'll start my comments by saying this. This is an extremely tragic situation, and our hearts go out, and our collective hearts go out to the family. To have an 18-year-old overdose and die, it's senseless. It's very, very hard, and so our thoughts go out to the family and to the mother in this case. The Victoria Police Department took this complaint seriously. We investigated as far as we could. We do not lay the charge. We recommend charges to Crown Counsel. So we did that. We took what we had and the evidence that we had. You also have to understand, and these are the nuances, but I want to be very careful because we have a grieving family who feels that justice wasn't served. So I don't want to diminish any of the comments that I'm making. So I've been trying to be very, very careful in what my comments are. There is a standard of evidence that is required before Crown Counsel will lay a charge. Sometimes Crown will deviate in some cases where it's in the public interest, where they still can, there's a little bit of latitude that they have. They had all of the evidence that we presented, and they did not lay a charge. There was not enough to lay a charge. The mum has come up with additional witnesses. Some of this evidence cannot be entered into court. It's third-hand evidence, it's hearsay evidence. The evidence that you and I can go undercover talking to friends and whatnot may not necessarily be admissible in court. So again, I have to work, and our officers have to work within the justice system and within the laws of the country. And that necessarily is not aligned with what people hear, what people have. So what we did is we re-looked at the investigation. We had other investigators assigned to it in case there was any bias or from the original investigators that they were just doubling down on, yeah, well, this is what I did and there's no new evidence. So we looked at this. There still was not enough, and this was supported by the BC Prosecution Service. When the mother laid her private information, even with a private information, the BC prosecution looked at that independently and still decided that there was not enough to prosecute anyone in this particular case. So now we move forward to the BC Coroner Service. So the Coroner Service will categorize every death. These are discussions we're actually having at the highest level with the chief coroner. There's a fairly new chief coroner. I'm going to be seeing him next week at BC Chiefs. My plan is to sit down with him and discuss this more. I just haven't had a chance to do that. So what they did is they have categorized this as a homicide. But there's a difference in culpability and non-culpability. So we're actually working with the coroner's service to say, well, when you categorize this as a homicide, the general public is going to think, well, wait, that's a homicide. Somebody is now liable for that, and the police didn't do their job properly. So unfortunately, it's a little misleading in the categorization that has happened. I need to get better understanding of it. But what we're doing is we're looking at it yet again. We're sending it and asking the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit, which looks after all suspicious deaths and homicides, now that it's been classified that way through the coroner's service, whether that's appropriate or not appropriate in the circumstances, we're going to have it reviewed one more time. So I just want to give the public and council confidence that we are not doubling down. This is an extremely serious case with just horrific outcome. And we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we have I can't make up the evidence though, right? I mean, the evidence is the evidence, and the courts will decide on whether, not on a balance of probabilities, but on beyond a reasonable doubt, if there's enough evidence there that meets the charge approval standard.
Okay, and thank you. That's very helpful. I'm just trying to understand, as a parent of 2 teenage daughters, right, what my takeaway should be from this. Because from this case, based on the reporting, obviously all I know about what's been reported publicly, you know more about it than I do. What's been reported publicly, though, is that a girl and her friend went to an apartment where there was, it sounds like, 2 other guys there. She was drugged and died. Seems like it's not that complicated to figure out who the perpetrators were. And then we have a 16-year-old girl in Oak Bay who gets drugged at a party. She almost dies. Thankfully, she survived. Not that many people at the party. It's not like 16-year-olds are that great at keeping secrets. It seems like it's not that hard in a lot of these cases to figure out who the perpetrators are, but for whatever reason, arrests aren't being made. And that worries me as a local government leader and as a parent of young daughters who could be the victims of these kinds of crimes, that it feels like there's this impunity around date rape drugs, in which some people are not only being sexually assaulted, but also actually being killed. So I don't, like, what should our takeaway be from this?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a number of takeaways, but the takeaway is that making sure that you know who is providing you the drink, making sure that it's somebody that you trust, it's somebody that you know, and making sure that you're as safe as possible not to put yourself into a situation. And if that situation does happen, trusting the police, reporting to the police in the earliest instance, and also encouraging all of your friends, all of them, to be cooperative with the police and to speak openly and candidly in what they saw and to help police further the investigation. So a lot of times on the surface, you presented some very generalities there. When it comes down to getting evidence and putting it before the courts, again, there's a threshold that has to be met. It's an independent threshold to the BC Prosecution Service. Our officers put all of the evidence that they have, and they work extremely hard in this particular case and in every case. And that threshold has to be met. But we also have to work within the framework of the Criminal Code of Canada.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for all those answers. Appreciate your candor. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.